Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human vessel drift through space like a dead fish. The ship looked pathetic compared to his battlecruiser. Its hull was covered in strange bumps and dishes that his intelligence officers said were research equipment. The whole thing looked like someone had stuck kitchen appliances all over a cargo freighter. Target confirmed as human research vessel Meridian, his tactical officer reported. 37 life signs detected. Minimal weapons. No military escort vessels in range. Vextar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. His crystalline exoskeleton caught the bridge lights and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across this sector for decades, and humans were supposed to be one of the easier species to deal with. They were soft-bodied creatures with no natural armor and primitive technology. Most species surrendered after seeing a Zephyrian war fleet, but humans sometimes tried to fight back with their crude metal ships and chemical explosives. Boarding teams Alpha through Gamma are ready, sir, reported Lieutenant Kexra. The breach pods are loaded and waiting for your command. Intelligence says this is an archaeological research mission, Vextar said to his crew. These humans dig up old artifacts from dead civilizations. They will have no combat training and probably no weapons beyond basic tools. We go in fast and hard. Secure the bridge and engineering sections first. Kill anyone who resists, but try to keep the research data intact. The Empire wants to know what these humans have been digging up. The breach pods launched from his ship like metal seeds. Each one carried 12 Zephyrian warriors in full combat armor. Their energy rifles could cut through most metals, and their exoskeletons could stop bullets and most energy weapons. Vextar had led hundreds of boarding actions against dozens of different species. This would be routine. Inside the human ship, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the middle of his small bridge, watching the alien contacts get closer. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his days in the Marines. Most people saw him as just another research ship captain, but Jake had fought in 3 different wars before he decided to dig up old alien ruins for a living. Lisa, how long until they reach us? He called to his chief engineer. About 4 minutes. Captain, Lisa Rodriguez answered from her station. She was bent over her control panel, checking system after system. Lisa had served 8 years in the engineering corps before she got tired of fixing warships and decided to fix research vessels instead. I can give you full power in 90 seconds. Tony, what do we have for weapons? Jake asked his security. Chief Tony Blackwood was checking his tablet and shaking his head. We have 6 plasma cutters for cutting through rocks, 3 heavy lifting devices for moving artifacts, some explosive charges for mining work, and my pistol. Tony had been military police for 12 years before he took this job. He thought he was done with combat. Dr. Amy Sullivan looked up from her workstation, where she had been cataloging alien artifacts they found on their last dig. Captain, you cannot seriously be thinking of fighting them. We are scientists, not soldiers. Maybe we can negotiate. Jake looked at her and then at his crew. Amy, these aliens just sent armed boarding parties toward our ship. They did not try to talk first. They are not here to negotiate. He turned to his communications officer. Rachel, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we are under attack and give them our location. Rachel Turner was already working at her station. I am trying, Captain, but they are jamming our communications. Nothing is getting through. Jake nodded. He had expected that. All right, people, listen up. We have about 3 minutes before hostile aliens board our ship. They probably think we are going to be easy targets because we are researchers. They are about to learn something important about humans. Lisa looked up from her engineering console. Jake, what do you want me to do with the power systems? Can you isolate sections of the ship independently? Yes, I can cut power life support, heating, and gravity to any section you want. Good. Tony, I want you to break out every tool we have that can be used as a weapon. Get Carl and Pete to help you. Rachel, keep trying to punch through their jamming. Everyone else secure anything that can be used against us and prepare for boarding. The crew moved quickly through the ship. Carl Jenkins was the maintenance chief, and he knew every pipe wire and vent in the ship. Pete Williams was their xenobiologist, and he had studied dozens of alien species. It would be useful in a fight even. If they had never been soldiers. Dr. Nina Parker was in the geology lab, securing mineral samples when the first breach pod hit the hull. The sound rang through the ship like a giant bell. She grabbed her sample case and ran toward the bridge. Steve Brooks was in the computer center, backing up all their research data to hidden storage devices. Danny Martinez was in the kitchen, gathering knives and anything else that could be used as weapons. The aliens cut through the hull in 6 different places. Vexstar had planned this carefully. His teams would board simultaneously and overwhelm any resistance before the humans could organize. The first team came through the main cargo bay. The second team breached the engineering section. The third team went for the bridge. What they found was not what they expected. The first team landed in the cargo bay and found it completely dark. Their night vision showed them a room full of boxes and equipment, but no humans. Team leader Saxel led his warriors forward carefully. The floor was covered with some kind of liquid that made their feet slip. Strange smells filled the air. Vexstar, this is Team 1. The cargo bay appears to be abandoned, but something is wrong here. Before Vexstar could respond, the ceiling above the aliens opened up, and hundreds of pounds of rock samples came crashing down. The humans had rigged the overhead storage containers to dump their contents on anyone entering the bay. 3 Zephyrians were crushed immediately. The rest were trapped under tons of mineral specimens from a dozen different worlds. Team 2 breached the engineering section and found Lisa Rodriguez waiting for them with a plasma cutter in her hands. She had turned off the artificial gravity in that section and was floating near the ceiling. When the aliens came through the breach, they floated helplessly in 0 gravity, while Lisa cut through their armor with industrial cutting tools. This is Team 2. We are under attack. The humans are using their tools as weapons. Team 3 reached the bridge and found it defended by Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins. They had built barriers out of furniture and equipment. Tony was armed with his pistol and Carl had a heavy wrench. The aliens had energy rifles, but the humans knew their ship better and used that advantage. Vexstar listened to the reports from his teams and felt something he had not felt in years. These humans were not panicking or surrendering. They were fighting back with intelligence and creativity. His warriors were trained to fight other soldiers, not scientists who turned their workplace into a battlefield. All teams, this is Vexstar. We form and advance carefully. These humans are more dangerous than intelligence predicted. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, coordinating the defense of his ship. He could hear weapons fire from 3 different sections. His crew was holding, but they could not hold forever against superior numbers and weapons. Lisa, can you isolate the sections where the aliens landed? Already working on it, Captain. I have cut power to the cargo bay, and I am venting atmosphere from the main corridor on Deck 3. Jake smiled. His crew might be scientists, but they were human scientists, and humans did not give up easily. The aliens were about to learn why his species had fought its way to the stars. The aliens regrouped in the main corridor on Deck 2. Vexstar could see through his helmet camera that 8 of his warriors were already down. The humans had turned their research ship into a maze of traps and ambush points. His remaining forces were spread across 3 different sections of the ship, and the humans seemed to know exactly where they were at all times. Sir, the humans have cut power to most of the ship, reported Saxel from Team 1. We are having trouble moving through the dark corridors. They know this ship better than we do. Vexstar clicked his mandibles in frustration. His intelligence. Officers had told him humans were a peaceful species that avoided conflict. The creatures defending this ship were nothing like the reports. They fought like cornered predators, using every advantage they could find. Team 2, report your status. He commanded. We have taken casualties, sir. The human in engineering is using industrial tools as weapons. She has cut 3 of our warriors in half with some kind of cutting beam. We cannot advance without heavy losses. Jake Morrison moved through his ship using maintenance tunnels that Carl Jenkins had shown him. The aliens were strong and well armed, but they did not know the layout of the meridian. Every human on board had lived and worked in these corridors for months. They knew which panels could be removed where the emergency supplies were hidden and how to move without being detected. He reached the computer center where Steve Brooks was working frantically at his terminal. Steve had been a systems analyst for 15 years before he joined the research team. He knew computers better than anyone else on the ship. Steve, what can you tell me about our uninvited guests? I have been monitoring their communications, Captain. They are using some kind of quantum encryption, but I managed to break part of it. There are 48 aliens on board, spread across 6 teams. They call themselves Zephyrians, and they have crystalline exoskeletons that protect them from most weapons. Most weapons, but not all weapons. That is what I am thinking, Captain. Lisa has been testing the plasma cutters against pieces of their armor. The cutters can get through, but it takes time, and they have to be close. Jake nodded and activated his communicator. All crew, this is the captain. The aliens have armor that stops bullets and energy weapons, but not cutting tools. Use the plasma cutter's mining charges and anything else that can break through crystal. Stay mobile and use the ship against them. Dr. Nina Parker was hiding in the geology lab with her mineral samples spread across the floor. She had been a rock hound since she was 12 years old, as she knew more about explosives than most military engineers. The samples around her included unstable compounds from 6 different worlds. Mixed properly, they could create explosions that would crack open mountains. She heard footsteps in the corridor outside and held her breath. 3 Zephyrian warriors moved past her door, searching for humans to capture or kill. Nina waited until they were gone, then went back to work mixing chemicals that were never meant to be combined. Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins had fallen back from the bridge to a more defensible position near the main laboratory. They had dragged furniture and equipment into the corridor to create barriers. Carl had found a case of emergency flares, and Tony was using them like grenades. The bright burning chemicals stuck to the alien armor and made it hard for them to see. Carl, how many more of those flares do we have? About 12, Captain gave me an idea, though. We have emergency oxygen tanks in every section of the ship. If we can rupture them near the aliens, the extra oxygen will make everything burn hotter. Tony smiled. He had not smiled since the attack began, but Carl was right. Humans had been using fire as a weapon since before they discovered metal. Do it. Lisa Rodriguez was still in the engineering section, but she had moved to a better position. The aliens had tried to rush her twice, and both times she had cut them down with plasma cutters and welding torches. The engineering bay was full of tools and equipment that could be turned into weapons. She had rigged the main power coupling to overload if the aliens tried to take control of it. Her communicator crackled to life. Lisa, this is Jake. Can you cause a controlled power surge through the ship? What kind of surge, Captain? Something that will overload their equipment without killing us. Lisa thought about it. The aliens were using energy weapons and sophisticated armor. A massive electrical surge might disrupt their systems long enough for the humans to gain an advantage. I can do it, Captain, but everyone needs to be touching something metal when I trigger it. The ship hull will ground the current. How long do you need? Give me 5 minutes to set it up. Rachel Turner was still at her communication station, trying to break through the alien jamming. She had managed to get a weak signal through to a merchant ship 3 light years away, but it would be days before any help could arrive. The crew of the Meridian was on their own. She heard weapons fire from somewhere below and knew the battle was getting closer to the bridge. Rachel had never been in combat before, but she had grown up on a farm and knew how to fight when she had to. She unplugged her console and started pulling out circuit boards and power cells. Electronic components could be turned into weapons if you knew what you were doing. Danny Martinez had left his kitchen and was moving through the ship with a bag full of knives and improvised weapons. He had been a cook in the army before he joined the research team, and he knew how to fight with whatever was available. The aliens were bigger and stronger than humans, but they moved like they expected their enemies to run away. He found Dr. Amy Sullivan hiding in her office surrounded by alien artifacts from their last dig. Amy was terrified, but she was also angry. These aliens were trying to steal years of research and kill her friends. Danny, what do we do? I am not a fighter. Doc, you do not have to be a fighter. You just have to be human. That seems to be enough. To surprise these things, Pete Williams had been studying the alien equipment left behind by the dead warriors. As a xenobiologist, he was fascinated by their crystalline armor and energy weapons. The armor seemed to be grown rather than manufactured, and the weapons used some kind of focused plasma that he did not recognize. But Pete had studied hundreds of alien species, and he knew that every form of life had weaknesses. The Zephyrian armor was strong, but it was also rigid. It did not bend or flex like human armor. A strong enough impact in the right place might shatter it completely. He activated his communicator. Captain, this is Pete. I think I know how to break their armor. We need to hit them with something that vibrates at the right frequency, like a sonic weapon. Pete, we do not have sonic weapons. No, Captain, but we have the ship communication array. If we can modify it to broadcast sound, instead of radio signals, we might be able to crack their armor like glass. Jake Morrison felt something that might have been hope. His crew was not giving up. They were adapting and learning and finding ways to fight back against superior enemies. That was what humans did when they were cornered. Pete worked with Rachel on the sonic weapon idea. Lisa, get ready with that power surge. Everyone else keep fighting and stay alive. We are going to show these aliens what happens when they pick a fight with the wrong species. The battle for the Meridian was far from over, but the humans were no longer just defending. They were starting to fight back. Pete Williams worked frantically in the communications center with Rachel Turner. They had pulled apart half the radio equipment on the ship, trying to turn it into a weapon. Pete's hands were covered in cuts from handling the sharp electronic components, but he did not stop working. The frequency needs to be exactly right, Pete said, as he connected wires to a power coupling. If we get it wrong, we might just make their armor stronger. Rachel was programming the main communications array to broadcast sound waves instead of radio signals. How do you know what frequency will work? I studied the pieces of their armor that Lisa cut off. The crystal structure has natural resonance points. If we hit them with the right sound waves, the whole thing should crack apart like glass. They heard weapons fire from the corridor outside. The aliens were getting closer to the communications center, and the humans were running out of places to retreat. Rachel's fingers flew over her keyboard as she tried to finish the modifications before the enemy found them. Lisa Rodriguez triggered her power surge from the engineering section. Every light on the ship flickered and died, then came back on twice as bright. Electrical current flowed through the metal hull and into anything touching it. The humans who had been warned grabbed onto metal surfaces and felt the current pass harmlessly through them to the ship hull dot The aliens were not so lucky. Their energy weapons exploded in their hands as the power surge overloaded their systems. Their armor, which was connected to internal power supplies, began sparking and smoking. Several Zephyrians screamed as their own equipment turned against them. Vexstar watched his helmet display go dark as the power surge fried his electronics. Half his warriors were stumbling around blind with their vision systems destroyed. The other half were trying to remove armor pieces that had become too hot to wear. "This is impossible," he said to his remaining squad leaders. "These humans are turning their entire ship into a weapon. How are they doing this?" His tactical officer Kexra was trying to restart his equipment. "Sir, our intelligence was wrong about everything. These humans are not peaceful researchers. They fight like they have been preparing for war their entire lives." Dionina Parker finished mixing her explosive compounds in the geology lab. She had created something that would make the aliens very unhappy. The mixture was unstable enough to explode from impact, but stable enough to be thrown. She filled a dozen sample containers with the compound and prepared to turn her scientific knowledge into a weapon. Nina heard footsteps in the corridor and opened her door just enough to see 3 Zephyrian warriors moving toward the communication center. Their armor was smoking from the power surge, and they looked angry. Nina smiled and threw her first improvised bomb. The explosion knocked all 3 aliens off their feet and cracked their crystalline armor. The sound echoed through the ship like thunder. Nina threw 2 more bombs before the aliens could recover, then slammed her door shut and ran for the emergency exit. Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins heard the explosions and knew Nina was fighting back. They had been forced to retreat from their position near the laboratory, but they were still causing problems for the invaders. Carl had rigged the ship oxygen system to create pockets of high oxygen concentration. When Tony shot his flares into these areas, the fire burned hot enough to melt metal. "Carl, how many more oxygen traps do we have?" "I set up 6 more, Captain, but the aliens are learning to avoid them. They are not as stupid as we hoped." Tony reloaded his weapon with another flare. "Then we make new traps. These things want to take our ship. They are going to have to fight for every meter of it." Jake Morrison was coordinating the defense from a maintenance tunnel between decks. He could move through the ship without being seen and stay in contact with his crew. The aliens had superior weapons and armor, but the humans had home field advantage and the stubborn refusal to give up that had carried their species across the galaxy. "Lisa, how are your power levels?" "We are running hot, Captain, but I can give you one more surge if you need it. After that, we will have to let the reactors cool down or risk a meltdown. Save it for when we really need it." "Pete, how is the sonic weapon coming?" "Almost ready, Captain. Rachel and I just need 2 more minutes to calibrate the frequency." Jake heard laser fire from somewhere above him. The aliens were still pushing forward, but every meter cost them casualties. His crew was making them pay for every advance. "Steve, what can you tell me about alien casualties?" Steve Brooks had been monitoring the enemy communications from his computer station. "I count at least 15 down, Captain, maybe more. They are having trouble coordinating because we knocked out their electronics. But they still have over 30 warriors, and we are running low on weapons." Danny Martinez had joined up with Dr. Amy Sullivan in her office. Amy was no longer hiding behind her desk. She was holding a piece of alien technology that looked like a metal rod with crystal attachments. Danny recognized it as some kind of tool from their archaeological digs. "Doc, what is that thing?" "It is a molecular scanner from the ruins on Kepler. 4. I think it might be some kind of weapon if we can figure out how to activate it." Danny looked at the device. Humans had been finding alien technology across the galaxy for decades, but most of it was too advanced to understand. "Can you make it work? I have been studying it for months." There are activation sequences carved into the crystal matrix. If I am right, this device can disrupt molecular bonds. Amy pressed a sequence of symbols on the crystal surface. The device hummed to life and projected a beam of blue energy. When the beam touched the metal wall, it began to dissolve. Amy and Danny looked at each other with surprise. "Doc, I think you just found us a real weapon." Pete Williams and Rachel Turner finished their modifications to the communications array. The equipment was jury-rigged with spare parts and held together with wire and determination, but it should work. Pete activated the system and began broadcasting on the frequency he had calculated. The sound waves spread through the ship like invisible hammers. They passed through the metal hull and human bodies without effect, but when they reached the Zephyrian armor, the crystal began to vibrate. Small cracks appeared in the smooth surfaces. The cracks spread and widened until entire. Sections of armor began falling apart. The aliens screamed as their protection crumbled away. Some tried to remove their armor, but the pieces were fused to their bodies. Others stumbled around blind as their helmet displays shattered. The sound waves turned their greatest advantage into a liability. Vextar felt his own armor cracking and knew the battle had turned against him. These humans had found his species' greatest weakness and turned it into a weapon. His crystalline exoskeleton, which had protected him through 100 battles, was breaking apart piece by piece. All teams, this is Vextar. The humans have some kind of sonic weapon. Our armor is compromised. Fall back to the breach points and prepare for emergency evacuation. But it was too late for an orderly retreat. The humans had been waiting for this moment. As soon as they saw the alien armor failing, they pressed their attack. Lisa Rodriguez came out of engineering with her plasma cutters. Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins advanced with their improvised weapons. Nina Parker threw her explosive compounds. With deadly accuracy, the hunters had become the hunted, and the humans were not in a merciful mood. The aliens were about to learn that when you corner a human, you get everything they have, and humans always have more than you expect. Vextar pulled his remaining warriors back to the main cargo bay where they had first entered the ship. More than half his boarding force was dead or wounded, and the rest were fighting without their armor. The humans had turned what should have been an easy capture mission into a nightmare of improvised weapons and deadly traps. "Sir, we cannot hold this position much longer," reported Saxel. His crystalline exoskeleton was cracked in a dozen places, and blue blood leaked from the gaps. "The humans are advancing from 3 different directions, and we have nowhere to retreat." Vextar looked around the cargo bay at his surviving warriors. These were elite troops who had conquered dozens of worlds for the Zephyrian Empire. They had never been defeated by any enemy, and certainly not by a species that was supposed to be weak and peaceful. But the humans aboard this ship fought like demons, using every advantage they could find. "Contact the fleet," Vextar ordered. "Tell them to target this ship with everything they have. If we cannot capture it, we will destroy it." His communications officer tried to establish contact, but shook his head. "Sir, the humans are still jamming our signals. I cannot reach the fleet." Jake Morrison moved through the maintenance tunnels with Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins. They were hunting the remaining aliens like predators stalking wounded prey. The ship that had been the aliens' home field advantage was now working against them. Every corridor was a potential ambush point, and every room could hide human fighters. "Captain, I count maybe 15 aliens left," Tony reported. "They have pulled back to the cargo bay where they first boarded." "That was a mistake," Jake said. "Carl, can you cut off their escape route?" Carl smiled. He knew every system on the ship, and he had been planning this move since the battle started. "I can seal the cargo bay doors and cut life support to that section. They will be trapped." "Do it, but leave them some air. I want them alive when this is over." Dr. Amy Sullivan had learned to use the alien device she found in her office. The molecular scanner could dissolve metal walls and disrupt electronic systems. She was moving through the ship with Danny Martinez clearing out alien equipment and weapons. Every piece of enemy technology they destroyed made the remaining invaders weaker. "Danny, this device is incredible," Amy said as she used the scanner to dissolve an alien communication relay. "The civilization that built this was thousands of years more advanced than us. Doc, right now, I am just happy it works against these crystal-armored jerks," Danny replied. He was carrying a bag full of kitchen knives and improvised explosives. "How many more pieces of their equipment can you find?" "I am detecting at least 6 more devices on this deck. If we can destroy them, all the aliens will be completely cut off from their fleet." Lisa Rodriguez had turned the engineering section into a fortress. She had plasma cutters, welding torches, and heavy machinery that could be used as weapons. But, more importantly, she had control of the ship power systems, and she was using that control to make life miserable for the invaders. She cut power to sections where aliens were hiding, then restored it suddenly to overload their equipment. She vented atmosphere from corridors to force them to move. She even reversed the artificial gravity in some areas to make them fall upward into the ceiling. "Jake, this is Lisa. I have the aliens trapped in the cargo bay, but they are trying to cut through the hull to escape. Can you stop them?" "I am flooding that section with inert gas. They will pass out before they can finish cutting through the hull. But Captain, there is something else. I am detecting multiple ships approaching our position. The alien fleet is coming." Steve Brooks was monitoring the alien fleet from his computer station. His screens showed dozens of enemy warships moving toward the Meridian. The research vessel had weapons that could fight off a few boarding parties, but it could not survive a fleet engagement. "Captain, we have 43 alien ships closing on our position. They will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Jake felt his stomach drop. His crew had fought off the boarding parties, but they could not fight an entire fleet. The Meridian was tough, but it was still just a research vessel. One direct hit from an alien battle cruiser would destroy them completely. "Steve, can you get a message through to the fleet?" "I might be able to punch through their jamming if I use the modifications Pete and Rachel made to the communications array." "Do it. Tell Earth Command what happened here. Make sure they know that humans can fight these aliens and win." Pete Williams and Rachel Turner were still operating their sonic weapon from the communications center. They had refined the frequency to target specific types of Zephyrian equipment. The sound waves could now disrupt their energy weapons and communication devices, as well as their armor. "Rachel, we need to modify this system again. If the alien fleet is coming, we need something that can reach their ships." Rachel looked at him with surprise. "Pete, this equipment is not designed for that kind of range. We would need a completely different power source." "What about the main reactor?" "If we channel the ship's entire power output through the communications array, we might be able to affect ships in close range. That would probably destroy the communication system and maybe blow up the ship." Pete nodded. "But it might also save our lives and give Earth time to prepare for war." Dr. Nina Parker had used up most of her explosive compounds, but she was still finding ways to fight. She had discovered that some of the mineral samples in her lab could be turned into toxic gases when heated. The aliens needed to breathe just like humans, and poison gas worked on both species. She was setting up gas traps in the corridors leading to the cargo bay. When the aliens tried to escape, they would walk into clouds of toxic vapor that would slow them down and make them easier to capture. Nina activated her communicator. "Captain, this is Nina. I have the escape routes covered with chemical weapons. If any aliens try to leave the cargo bay, they are going to have a very bad day." "Good work, Nina. How much more of that stuff do you have?" "Enough to cover the whole." Ship if we need to. These mineral samples are from 12 different worlds, and some of them are very nasty when you know how to use them. Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins had reached the cargo bay and were watching the trapped aliens through security cameras. The Zephyrians were trying to cut through the hull with hand tools, but the inert gas was making them sluggish and confused. Captain, the aliens in the cargo bay are almost unconscious. We can capture them whenever you want. Jake Morrison stood in the middle of his ship and looked around at his crew. They had fought off an alien boarding party using nothing but improvised weapons and human stubborn refusal to give up. But now they faced a much bigger problem. All crew, this is the captain. We have defeated the boarding parties, but the alien fleet is coming. We have 20 minutes to decide what we do next. We can try to run, but they will probably catch us. We can try to hide, but they know where we are. Or we can fight. Lisa Rodriguez looked up from her engineering console. Captain, if we fight, we die. This ship cannot take on a fleet. Maybe not Lisa, but we can hurt them. We can show them that humans do not give up easy. And maybe we can give Earth time to prepare for what is coming. The crew of the Meridian looked at each other and nodded. They had already proven that humans were more dangerous than anyone expected. Now they had a chance to prove it again. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his research vessel and watched the alien fleet approach on his screens. 43 warships against one converted cargo hauler with kitchen knives and improvised weapons. The smart thing would be to surrender and hope the aliens showed mercy. But Jake had been a Marine before he became a scientist, and Marines did not surrender when they could still fight. Lisa, how much power can you give me? Captain, I can overload the main reactor and channel everything through the ship systems. It will probably destroy us, but we will go out with a bang. Pete, is your sonic weapon ready? Pete Williams looked up from his jury-rigged equipment. I have connected it to the main power grid, Captain. If Lisa gives me full reactor output, I can broadcast our frequency across half the solar system. Every Zephyrian ship in range will lose their armor and weapons. Rachel, can you get a message to Earth? Rachel Turner was working frantically at her communications station. I have a narrow beam transmission ready, Captain. It will punch through their jamming, but only for a few seconds. Jake nodded and activated the ship-wide communications. All crew, this is your captain. We are about to show these aliens what happens when they pick a fight with humans. Everyone get to emergency stations and prepare for combat. The alien fleet moved into attack formation around the Meridian. Fleet Admiral Zextok commanded the armada from his flagship. He had received no word from the boarding parties and assumed they had captured the human ship. But something felt wrong about the situation. Admiral, we are receiving no communication from Commander Vexstar, his tactical officer reported. The human ship appears to be intact, but we cannot raise any of our boarding teams. Perhaps their communications are damaged, Zextok replied. Signal the human vessel to surrender. If they comply, we will accept their submission. If not, we will destroy them. The message from the alien flagship appeared on Jake's screen. The translation was crude, but the meaning was clear. Surrender or die. Jake looked at his crew and saw determination in their faces. These people had spent months together digging up artifacts from dead civilizations. They had become a family, and families protected each other. Rachel, send our reply. Rachel transmitted Jake's response to the alien fleet. It was short and to the point. Come and take it. Admiral Zextok read the human reply and clicked his mandibles in annoyance. These creatures were as stubborn as the intelligence reports suggested. All ships target the human vessel. Destroy it. The alien warships opened fire with energy beams and plasma cannons. The space around the Meridian lit up with deadly weapons. Fire. But Jake had been expecting this. His ship was not built for combat, but it was tough, and his crew knew how to make the most of what they had. Lisa now would be good. Lisa Rodriguez triggered the reactor overload from her engineering station. Every system on the ship suddenly had 10 times more power than it was designed to handle. Lights exploded in showers of sparks. Computer screens went dark. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, making everyone float and fall at random. But the sonic weapon system held together long enough to do its job. Pete Williams activated his frequency generator and felt the ship vibrate around him. The sound waves spread out from the meridian like ripples in a pond. They passed harmlessly through space and the hulls of both human and alien ships. But when they reached the crystalline armor and weapons of the Zephyrian fleet, the effect was devastating. Across 43 warships, the sound waves found their targets. Energy weapons exploded as their crystal focusing elements shattered. Armor plating cracked and fell away from ship hulls. Even the bridge windows on some vessels began to fracture as the resonance frequency tore apart their molecular structure. Admiral Zextok watched his flagship fall apart around him. The crystal command displays cracked and went dark. His armor began falling off in pieces. Throughout his fleet, the same thing was happening. Dozens of advanced warships were being disabled by sound waves from a single human research vessel. "This is impossible," he said to his crew. "How can one small ship destroy an entire fleet?" His tactical officer was trying to restart his equipment. "Sir, our weapons are offline. Our armor is compromised. Half the fleet is reporting critical. System failures." The human ship was still broadcasting its deadly frequency. Every second of exposure made the damage worse. Ships that had conquered worlds for the Zephyrian Empire were being destroyed by invisible waves of sound. Jake Morrison felt his ship shaking apart around him, but he smiled anyway. His crew had done something incredible. They had turned a research vessel into a weapon that could cripple an alien fleet. The reactor was overloading, and the ship would probably explode in minutes, but they had proven their point. "Steve, are you getting this on the recorders?" Steve Brooks was trying to keep his computer systems online long enough to document what was happening. "Everything is being recorded, Captain. Earth Command will know exactly how we did this." "Good. Rachel, send the data burst to Earth now, before we lose communications completely." Rachel Turner activated her narrow beam transmitter and sent everything they had learned about the Zephyrians back to human space. The technical specifications of their armor, the frequency that could destroy it, the tactical data from the boarding. Action. Everything that Earth would need to fight back against the alien empire. The message streaked away from the meridian at light speed, carrying the most important military intelligence in human history. Dr. Amy Sullivan was still carrying the alien molecular scanner she had found in her office. As the ship shook itself apart around her, she realized this device might be the key to understanding the technology of the civilization that built it. If she could get it back to Earth, the scientists there could learn things that would change human society forever. "Danny, we need to get to the escape pods." Danny Martinez looked at her with surprise. "Doc, I thought we were going down with the ship." "The captain said we should show them what humans can do." "Well, humans also know when to live to fight another day." Tony Blackwood and Carl Jenkins were securing the captured Zephyrian prisoners in the cargo bay. Vexstar and his surviving warriors were unconscious from the gas, but they were still alive. They would be valuable sources of intelligence if any humans survived to interrogate them. "Carl, get these aliens to the escape pods. Dead enemies teach us nothing, but live ones can tell us about their empire." Lisa Rodriguez was trying to contain the reactor overload from her engineering station. The power systems were beyond critical, but she might be able to keep them stable for a few more minutes. Long enough for the crew to escape before the ship exploded. "Captain, I can give you maybe 5 more minutes before this whole ship turns into a star." Jake Morrison looked around his bridge one last time. The Meridian had been his home for 2 years. It was where his crew had discovered amazing artifacts from lost civilizations. Now it was going to be their monument to human determination. All crew abandon ship. Get to the escape pods and make sure the prisoners and data come with you. The crew of the Meridian evacuated their dying ship and watched from the escape pods as it finally exploded. The blast lit up space like a small sun and sent shock waves through the disabled alien fleet. Admiral Zixtok survived the destruction of his flagship, but most of his fleet was crippled or destroyed. He would return to the Zephyrian Empire with news that would change everything. The humans were not the weak prey species their intelligence had described. They were something far more dangerous. 6 months later, the research vessel Meridian was remembered as the ship that started the first interstellar war. But it was also remembered as proof that humans could fight against impossible odds and win. The galaxy had learned something important about the species from Earth. Never underestimate the creatures who turn their tools into weapons, their homes into fortresses, and their knowledge into power. Because when you corner a human, you get everything. They have, and humans always have more than you expect.